The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you a songwriter? Are you looking to turn your songwriting passion into a full-time gig? Whether you are just at the start of your songwriting journey or a seasoned industry professional, this show is made for you. Welcome to the Songwriter Show, bringing together songwriting news, interviews, and community. Now, welcome your host, Sarantos.
Thank you so much for tuning in tonight, and welcome back to the Songwriter Show. I'm your host, Sarantos. I'm a solo music artist who's been writing lyrics for as long as I can remember. Words are so important to me, and that's why I'm thrilled to host this wonderful show. I believe that every song is a story. The Songwriter Show is broadcast live on number one ranked W4CY Radio with listeners in all 206 countries in the world and every state in the United States. The station is also licensed with ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and Sound Exchange with partnerships throughout the music industry, including iHeartRadio with exposure to over 300 million listeners.
And now, welcome this week's special guest.
Tonight's special guest is Kory Caudill. Welcome to the show, Kory.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So let me tell our fans a little bit about you. I love your bio, by the way. Don't let the aw shucks demeanor of world-class pianist Kory Caudill fool you. The jeans, boots, plaid shirt, and University of Kentucky ball cap can be misleading, but his musical prowess is as polished as it is natural. When Kory was just a few years old, his parents were stunned to see him walk to the piano and play the melody to John Williams' theme from Superman immediately after it aired on television. They knew their child had a gift, and they worked to provide him with every resource available to develop his musical abilities. So I guess it's safe to say you started at a young age?
I started very young, yeah. I was fortunate that both of my parents were professional musicians. Dad worked in the music business, but he's also a phenomenal piano player, and my mother was a high school music teacher. So they saw that I liked it, and they helped me along the way, but they never pushed it on me. I feel really lucky because they were equally as active in helping me with Little League or basketball as they were in the piano. So I think that kind of helped me develop my own love for it, and I think that's why I wound up choosing it as a profession as opposed to have they force it on me.
I think that's perfect because I think a lot of parents do force their children to play an instrument or play something the kids really don't want to, and it seems like you flourish, and it seems like they did it the right way.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we just had our first daughter, so we're definitely going to pull from their book.
Congratulations.
I do think that well, thank you. I do think that music in some form or fashion is just a part of a balanced education. So she's going to know how to play or do something in the music world, no matter what, just the same as I had to take math class. And if she happens to fall in love with it, then we'll help her along the way.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Did your parents, I don't know if you ever asked them, but did they play music or sing to you when you were in your mother's womb or anything like that?
That's a great question. They did actually, and there's no scientific evidence to link the two things. But I learned early on that I had perfect pitch, and I was always drawn to Chopin music, and that's what Mom always played up to her womb. So when my wife was expecting, after we saw Annalie's heartbeat on her first ultrasound visit, I came home and I recorded her some piano music at the same tempo as her heart rate. So where I traveled for a living, it was kind of nice for me to know that Amanda had that version of me to be able to play to her womb and to connect with Annalie and kind of sync up with her. So a little sappy, but
sure, no, that's wonderful.
That on. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So that's an awesome story, but I have to tell you that I got to be honest, I have a little bit of resentment when I heard that you have perfect pitch because I have struggled, and it's taken me so long to understand what pitch it is and melody, and to keep working hard at it. So, to have someone that's just naturally gifted at that, it's always fascinated me. Like, how in the world did that happen?
Oh, well, thank you. I don't, there's a lot of research that's shown that a lot of people have the capacity for it, and they lose it at a very young age. So that may or may not be true, but I've heard that a lot in conversation. But working in Nashville, there's actually, are you familiar with the Nashville number system at all?
Yeah.
So that actually winds up being a really helpful tool for folks in the songwriting community in terms of identifying pitch and how it relates to your key center and that kind of thing. And there are times where I'll be sitting up at night and the air conditioner kicks on and I'm thinking, gosh, that's between an F and an F sharp. That I'm like, it might be kind of nice just to be able to know what the intervals are and not be thinking about this right now. That's a curse, but that's a good thing to and a good skill to have. Tell me a little bit about your daughter. What do you think? You mentioned a little bit about what you're going to do to her, but are you going to have her try the piano? Are you going to have her try the guitar? What do you feel is the main instrument, that you'd like to have her try? Well, I think the piano translates very well to everything. It's a great visual. So I know when I'm playing guitar or anything else, I always still see the keyboard in my head for theoretical purposes. And right now, it's just her favorite toy. So she loves the time we spend sitting at the piano, and she'll just beat the fire out of that thing. And it's the sweetest music I ever heard. So
that's cool.
I'll make sure she's familiar with it in that it's something she at least has a fundamental knowledge of, just the same as she does with all of her classes throughout her education. So,
yeah.
My biggest thing though is she does not have to be a musician. I want her to be whatever she wants to be in the world, and we're going to make sure she has every chance to do all that.
I think that's very important, because I think a lot of people in the music business, like you said, they might try to force their kids to go into music, and then outside the music world, there's this big inherent bias when people talk about wanting to sing, write songs, become an actor or painter, art. It's like this, well, why don't you go be a doctor or lawyer? And I think that's horrible. I think it's wonderful to let kids do whatever they want to be.
Oh, absolutely. And my wife is she's a speech pathologist, and she has 3 other sisters, and they're all within a year apart from each other, and they're all in the medical field, and her parents were in the medical field. So when Amanda and I started seeing each other, I think she kept me a secret from her dad for about a year because probably largely because of the stigma attached to musicians. But the coolest thing, one of the coolest experiences of my life actually was finally being able to meet them. And that I say that also needing to share that they are the sweetest people in the world who never would have assumed anything about what I did for a living. But you're very right in that there are a lot of assumptions that come with telling people you're a musician. So when I finally got to meet them, and I got a chance to play for them, they had that, oh, okay, I get it moment where it was kind of more than just this guy's a good piano player, and it was I think that this guy can actually provide for my daughter by doing this. And so it was kind of neat seeing music being able to break down that barrier.
Yeah. Well, and that's what music does, right? Breaks down a lot of barriers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So has Amanda ever written a song with you, or has she inspired any songs? No. She's purely on the listening side of it, and I love it like that. When I come home, I get to shut it off, and it's great. Amanda's favorite genre actually is, I don't know how to describe it other than just vulgar hip hop. So she loves it, and I love that too. I actually, in a lot of the music that I write,
I try to pull from some of my favorite artists like Pat Metheny, Bruce Hornsby, a lot of the jazz greats too, Miles Davis, Oscar Peterson, Keith Jarrett. What I find a lot of times, though, is that what really makes me connect with their music is little snippets in their solo where they stumble onto an idea that really resonates with me, and I want them to keep doing it, but they kind of move on because they have more to say. But when you go into hip-hop, and especially early 90s rap, they find the right riff that connects with people, and they give it to you. You get 3 or 4 minutes of it, so there's something pretty pure about that to me.
Yeah, I agree. So how many instruments do you technically play?
Well, I would only feel all right about somebody paying me to play the piano, but I can do enough damage on an acoustic guitar and on a bass, and I know everybody likes to be a drummer, but I'm actually good enough on drums to kind of play on my own music and be able to move things around where they need to be. But I also do a lot of programming. In my music, when I make a track, I never drag and drop loops. I actually play every part in, but I play it in on the keyboard. So I'll play the drums in with my keyboard, the bass, all the strings, etc., like that. So
sure,
that's where being a pianist has been very handy because it allows me to communicate with the technology.
Yeah. I actually saw this really cool YouTube video. I posted about it this week of, I think it was called like Badass Bass Player or something like that. This guy basically, played it nice and slow, and then he video comped it to actually be like really fast, like he's jamming on it. And he wasn't that skilled of a bass player, and it got me thinking how I kind of do what you do on my music too, where in Logic I can easily create things, but I don't want to be out there in public playing all these instruments that I'm not super talented in. I base everything off the piano too, and I think it's easier versus a live concert, to be out there soloing on a guitar and all these different instruments. That's not my skill set.
Right, I'm the same way, and I love ideally when I make music, there's enough of a budget, or I have some musicians who are just willing to go in and create with me, because as much as I enjoy making all the parts myself, because that's what I'm hearing in my head, and I like being able to bring that out, there's something really special that happens when you get a bunch of really great musicians in a room together, and you just can't recreate that by yourself, as I'm sure you're well aware of at the same time. So I try to find that blend between making music on my own and with trying to allow my music to let folks share what they're great at.
Sure. So tell me a little bit, do you teach music? Because it seems like you'd be a phenomenal teacher, or do you just exclusively play and do your own thing?
Well, I appreciate it. I think I'm probably a terrible teacher.
No, I doubt it, man.
My mother has a really, really great gift for that. She's able to connect to people and find ways to allow them to grasp concepts. For me, anytime somebody wants to come hang out and watch what I'm doing, I love it, because a lot of really great musicians let me do that. So and oftentimes when folks do that, I'm pretty quick to tell them this is what you don't need to do. But even though I'm doing it, so I love any chance I get to try to pay forward some stuff that was given to me. But as far as being an actual educator, I think there are folks who are a lot more gifted at that than I am, who ought to be doing it instead of me.
Okay, let's get into your songwriting a little bit. Do you typically do lyrics first, music first? What's your routine? There's
rarely a routine to it, or there's rarely a formula. A lot of times I'll have lyrics kind of come to mind first. I write a lot with a gentleman named Josh Martin, who is a prominent songwriter down here in Nashville, and he's also from Eastern Kentucky, where I'm from, and he's a great lyricist. So a lot of times I'll have a strong hook, or what I think is a strong hook, and I'll call him up and I'll say, "Hey, Josh, what do you think about this hook?" And he'll say, "Yeah, that's great." And then in an hour he'll call and he'll have the rest of the song written. So lyrically we go like that a lot. He and I tend to write metaphorically when we can. But as far as my real passion, which is instrumental music, those ideas come to me in a lot of different ways. I probably don't sit down and pull from emotions as much as I should. A lot of times I'll be playing, and while I'm freelancing, a riff will kind of stick with me, and I'll develop it to the point where it becomes a bit more organized. And then I try to focus it all on tension and release, because I think that's kind of what music is all about, is how do you build that tension, how do you build the anticipation into a moment, and what happens to let it all go. So once I'm onto an idea, I start to focus it on that. And there have been a couple times where I have drawn purely from emotion, and those actually have wound up being my favorite songs, though.
Sure. I think you touch on something that is very, when you look at amateur versus professionals, the tension, building up tension and release, it's such a big part to it. And I think some of these concepts sound really easy, but they're so critical for songwriters.
Absolutely. I think that right now I'm listening to a lot to the new Paul McCartney record, and you talk about some good tension on that. There's dissonance in ways where you wouldn't normally expect, and there's something really, really satisfying to me as a listener right now about not knowing where the song is going, but then after a few moments of that, having some music there where you can predict what's happening, where it is, where it's easy for a moment. And then those are the kind of things that make you listen actively, I think, as opposed to just having it on while you're doing something else.
Yeah, especially the first time you hear something like that. It's that old adage, fresh but familiar. And someone like Paul McCartney, my God, that guy's a legend.
Right.
The stuff he does is, and I think maybe musicians appreciate that a little bit more, whereas maybe the average layperson is just like, oh, it just sounds good, but they don't really. But I'm sure at your level, the things you hear, they're inspirational. Well,
a lot of what I hear is, more often than not, when I hear something, I still get the chill bumps on my arms, or I'll get, my wife will make fun of me because she'll look over and I'll be tearing up, because it just, a lot of times that stuff will connect with me a lot. And when I'm writing, my focus isn't on how do I do that for myself, or how do I make something that a musician hears and thinks, man, that guy did that really well. The whole goal is for a listener to hear that and to get the same emotional response as I get from playing it or writing it, because at the end of the day, we all enjoy music just the same, except I like it from being on a performance and a creating side of it, and other folks enjoy it just as much from being on a listening side of it. But I think the second you start trying to do it for yourself, or to try to be cool, or to try to be impressive, you start going down the wrong path. My goal is never for folks to go to a show and say, man, those guys are great, they can really play. I want them to leave saying, gosh, I feel great, or I really thought about something, or man, this made me feel a certain way, or it brought back some memories. It's about the folks listening and how you connect with your audience. And I think tension and release is primarily how you achieve that.
Yeah. Do you think music means more to you than like the average listener?
I don't. I think about it all the time, because that's my passion in life, but everybody has one. And I think that for me, in order to enjoy it as much as others might, I need to know everything that I can about it. I need to be able to mold it in every way that I can possibly do it. I need to be able to play piano well enough for the instrument to become an extension of my body so that I can communicate. So I think that it's not that music means any more to me as much as the way I enjoy music is just different than folks who aren't musicians.
Okay. So Is there a line that you remember, like the worst lyric you've ever written that you want to share with us? Which just kind of cringed when you heard it. You're like, what was I thinking? I think we all have those moments, but what's the first thing that pops in?
Nashville kind of has this factory setting in terms of songwriting, and for a brief moment, I started kind of diving into some Nashville pop radio songwriting with some folks, just to do it. That's what you do, and who knows, if you're writing with a big writer, you might strike gold and stuff. I learned really quick that was not for me. But yeah, one of the worst lyrics I ever wrote was something about being stuck on somebody like a hair on a biscuit.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Is that a Kentucky thing or what? I haven't heard that expression.
That's a Kentucky thing. There's all kinds of those. Yeah.
That's cool. All right. You got me thinking now. I'm like, hey, that's interesting imagery. That might actually work in a song, but.
Shoot, I mean, I guess I've heard worse, but I'm pretty disappointed. So.
That's all right. What was your first job?
My first job, I had a couple. My dad ran a performing arts center in Eastern Kentucky, and I did some work there, some odds and ends stuff, whatever kind of needed done. It was one of those centers that ran really, really well, and it was a real jewel for where it was in Eastern Kentucky. But it was also very understaffed in order to be able to maintain itself. So a lot of times, Dad was the one going and applying for grants and talking to governors and senators and writing shows and doing all kinds of creative stuff. But a lot of times he was also the one cleaning toilets. So I was jumping in there on some of that with him, just enough for him to kind of show me what work is, but they never really pushed that on me. I worked some as a session musician later on in high school, but my first job was as a clerk at a video store. Gosh, it's wild to think about video stores now.
Which one?
No, actually, it was a Superstar Video, and then it was bought out by Movie Gallery.
Okay, interesting. Okay,
so, and then after in college, my senior year, I was still in the middle of my senior year when I met Justin Moore, who was a country singer, and he had just signed his record deal, and the next day he met me, and we started touring, and he was well on his way to where he is now, which is pretty much superstar status. And but at the time, we weren't doing a lot. We were all just really excited young kids. I was 20, wanted to get on our first tours and everything. Well, we had a bunch of tour dates booked, but I had classes, so I just didn't sign up for classes my last 2 semesters. Then the budget got shot, so those wound up being acoustic dates, so no piano player. So I went back home to East Kentucky. I was at Nashville, attending Belmont, and I worked with a gentleman from my church operating bulldozers, and we were clearing off what used to be old mining paths, turning them into 4-wheeler trails. So we would be up at 5:30 in the morning on bulldozers in the hills, and it was actually a lot of fun, but it was also enough work to show me I need to get back in school and finish my degree in music, and I'm not man enough to be doing this right now.
Sure. Okay. Before we take a listen to your first song, other than moving to Nashville, how do you get people to take you seriously as a songwriter?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know that anybody does take me serious yet, but I think what I've learned as I've done it a little bit longer is folks have started to kind of pay more attention to me as a writer when I stopped writing stuff that I thought people wanted me to write, and I just started writing what I believed in. And I stopped being apologetic about it. I stopped saying, well, here's this tune I wrote, here's kind of the genre, here's what I was thinking. No, I think when you exude confidence when you present your music, I think that translates, and I think it affects how people hear it.
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay. So tell us the name of this first song we're going to hear, Kory.
I believe, is this one, do you have a song for Appalachia?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so this is my favorite song that I've ever written. It's an instrumental, and I wrote it as an homage to where I'm originally from in eastern Kentucky, and I'm from a small mining town in Floyd County, and it's actually as deep as you can get in rural Appalachia without having to turn around. It stops. It's a dead end, and but it's a really, really special place. It's one of the most culturally rich and musically rich areas in the world. And the last couple generations have been really hit hard by a lot of different things with the economy. Both of my grandfathers mined coal for a living, and they did that after they got done fighting wars. So they came home and they powered an entire country, and they sacrificed their bodies and their health and a lot of times their lives and times with their families in order to do so. And for a long time, they didn't even get paid American currency. They got paid in mining companies' script. And then after the mining companies had dug up everything, they packed up and left. And so we've got all these really diligent, brave, hardworking folks who for a couple of generations now have been seeing the effects of coal companies just leaving us high and dry. And those problems have been amplified by a lot of different things, other energy sources, political factors that I won't dive into. And a lot of this song for me is a reflection on who Appalachians and Eastern Kentuckians are and the cards they've been dealt. And a lot of it also is, on a more personal note, it's for my parents. They have spent their entire lives trying to nurture our artistic scene and to provide opportunities for folks that they wouldn't get anywhere else in the world. And they had them right there in Eastern Kentucky. I was doing things on a stage in Prestonsburg, Kentucky, that I couldn't have done in New York City. And I think the region tended to take that for granted. We just assume that because it's there, it can't be that big a deal, or it can't be that good of a thing. And the last couple of years, I kind of sat back and watched as my parents fought that fight and did everything they could for a lot of people, only to finally get drawn into some small town politics. And they just gave up. They retired and they left town. And so a lot of it, too, is a tribute to them. And I wanted to write the song to bring attention to the fact that right now is a very crucial time in that region. And it's a time where we need to focus on lifting each other up, and we need to be focused on supporting people who nurture our greatest assets, which is our arts, our people. So
Okay.
That's
Sounds
a very
great.
long-winded way to say it. This is my favorite song. So.
All right, Kory. Well, let's listen to a Song for Appalachia right now. It's a really close song, man. I have a really crazy question for you. What's your superpower, man?
My superpower. Okay, it does me no good whatsoever because my knees are so bad, but I have a wicked jump shot.
Oh, okay. All
I don't know if that's what you're asking.
No, that's cool, man. That's fine. Yeah, I grew up watching Michael Jordan and the Bulls kicking butt, so I have very fond basketball memories, but I can never play that great. So,
my junior year of high school, we had an algebra teacher the first day of class, and I went to school in Eastern Kentucky, and it was just everything was kind of off the radar for a while. But first day of class, he just said, you need to listen to me if you want to get a job, because now's when this stuff starts getting for real. Kory, if you're planning on going to Nashville after this and being a piano player, you ought to do it. That's fine. If you want to go down and shoot ball, go ahead. So
yeah,
during fifth period every day, I was in the gym.
But at least you had your backup, though, right? Yeah.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah. What about, you're from Nashville, or what about scams? Every show I try to ask people, what can you warn other songwriters or artists about? We're all exposed to scams constantly. Tell me one that comes to mind that you want to warn us about.
One is anybody who tells you they can get you, that you can send them a song and X amount of dollars, and they guarantee something happening as a result. That's just, those rarely work out. Those are never the case. They're a lot of times in Nashville, we'll see a buddy system where somebody will say, "Hey, I've got a song that needs to be cut," and they'll say, "Oh, well, you need to call up so and so because he's got the best studio," and then he's going to say, "Oh yeah, we need to have this guy play on it," and he'll call the other guys because they're the best. And well, you need to go to this store and buy this mic if you're going to track this song because that's the one it needs. And all of a sudden you find and hire this guy for a music video. Then all of a sudden you find yourself holding this little tiny niche system run by a few folks who are just going to take your money up off the top and tell you everything. They won't give you an honest assessment of the song. It's easy to fall into that. I think if you're going to come down to Nashville and look to cut a song, the best thing would be, one of the best things to do would be to call the musicians union. They can guide you through the entire process. They can tell you what a typical budget should look like. And they can really protect you from, sharks like that, because there are a lot of folks, especially when it comes to new artists, a lot of times young new artists whose parents are eager to have things work out for them. There are a lot of organizations down here that will take a lot of money and tell you they're going to make your child a star. And they wind up kind of keeping you in their system for 5, 6, 7 years and then saying, "Oh, shoot, it didn't work out."
Yeah, that's sad. I hate to hear stuff like that, especially there's obviously been success stories with Taylor Swift and some of these other, and it takes hard work too. It doesn't just take dollars, but it always breaks my heart to hear people get taken advantage of like that. So that's great advice, and thank you for that. What surprised you the most about Nashville when you first moved there?
Gosh, well, Nashville's changed tremendously. When I first got to Nashville in 2004, and right now it's becoming more of a global city. And at the time, it was it was one of those world's biggest small town kind of vibes. But to be honest, one of the things that surprised me the most was that we were kind of operating on the same level as far as talent and professionalism where I'm from in Eastern Kentucky. And I mean that as a compliment to that region, as opposed to saying Nashville wasn't as full of good players and a good scene as I thought it was. It was incredible. But it was the difference in Nashville for me is that there's a lot of noise to weed through before you get to the good stuff that I wasn't really anticipating. You have to really. There are a lot of folks who are kind of looking to do the same thing, and it takes a while. It took longer than I expected to fall into the right circles of folks who were really serious about what they did.
Okay. Tell us where listeners can find more information about you, and where can they purchase your music if they want to.
Great. You can go to my website. It's my name's Kory with a K, so Kory Caudill, CAUDILL.com. And there's some links there where you can find all the music. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/Kory Caudill Piano. Twitter and Instagram are both Kory Caudill. We have music on Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you can find music. You can holler at Mom. I'm sure she'll mail you a couple CDs. So anywhere you can find music, we should have a presence there. Okay.
What's the general consensus in Nashville or with you about all the legislation that's passed? Do you think it's protecting songwriters? Is it good for songwriters?
Well, I think it's a great step for songwriters. I think right now there's a really heightened awareness of what streaming and what the change in revenue streams are doing to the town, to the industry, and to the people who make music for a living. I think it's kind of shown in the quality of music that that the public is getting now. So I think that the Music Modernization Act is a great step in the right direction. I think there's a lot of big changes that probably still need to happen, but I can see us being closer to those changes now than we were. So I think we're starting to head in the right direction.
Do you think that eventually, you look at Spotify now, letting people put their music direct? Apple Music, I've heard, has hired some marketing people, and they're going to do that too. Do you think they're going to become labels eventually? Do you think it's all going to be like Netflix and Hollywood?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in a sense they kind of already are acting as labels, and the definition of a record label now is vastly different than it was. In a sense, it's a distributor, and right now Spotify and Apple Music are, if you can go directly to them and dodge those percentages coming out of your revenue stream for middle people, then why not? And I can see a lot more people going that route. So it is going to get really interesting. I've been in the business long enough to know that it changes a lot, so I'm positive about it, and it's just another step to figure out how to navigate.
Yeah. So before we listen to your second song, what's the best hidden gem you can give us in terms of marketing? Something that people that don't have a huge budget can do to promote their music on radio, Spotify, Apple Music. Anything you can share with us that you'd recommend?
Gosh, I would ask other people the same thing, honestly, because everybody right now has to do the same things to get to where they want to go. You know, I have to release on the same platforms as Blake Shelton or as Yanni or as other artists who are a lot more established than me. So we're constantly fighting those. I'm so sick of hearing the word algorithm. We're constantly fighting those Facebook algorithms and things that want you to pay in order to be able to have your content seen. So some of the little tricks that, and I shouldn't say tricks, because the things that have done best for me have been the things that I've enjoyed the most, which is going live on Facebook and Instagram and actually performing, but I'll actually really enjoy getting to interact with people individually, ask questions, take requests. I know this is not any groundbreaking information, but when I do that, I wind up seeing huge spikes in engagements. I'll see an uptick in streams, and it's hard to find time to do those things. But anything you can do to interact with your audience that isn't soliciting them, and that lets them know you genuinely care about them and appreciate what you're doing. Those kind of things translate, and as those interactions build, then your posts get bumped up in the algorithms and all those good things. But I found that without the money, some of the more well-intended stuff actually kind of rises to the top.
Yeah. All right, Kory. Thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
All right, now we're going to listen to his second song, The Way Back Home.
Space. God willing, I'll see your face. Oh, I know right where I'm going, and the road, it feels so long. The traveler's light keeps glowing, and I know I'm not alone. I'm not traveling alone while I'm making my way back home. I'm making my way back home. Sun sitting through my windshield, days already gone. But burning these two headlights, I'll drive all night, making my way back home. Yeah, oh, I know right where I'm going, and the road, it feels so long. The traveler's light keeps glowing, and I know I'm not alone. No, I'm not traveling alone. I'm making my way back home. Yeah, I'm making my way back home. Oh, I'm making my way back home. Oh, I'm making my way back home. Image of your smile every minute, every mile, and I'm making my way back home. I know right where I'm going, and the road, it feels so long. Traveler's light keeps glowing, and I know I'm not alone. No, I'm not traveling alone. I'm making my way back home. Yeah, I'm making my way back home. Oh, I'm making my way back home. Yeah, making my way back home.
Thank you for listening to The Songwriter Show. To keep the momentum going, head over to www.songwritershow.com and join our free music community of artists, songwriters, and producers. That's www.songwritershow.com.